Welcome to Carrickfergus Vineyard, a place of hope where lives are changing. We're a church in the heart of Carrickfergus, passionate about seeing people's lives changed by the love of Jesus. The following message was given at one of our Sunday services.
It's so lovely to have you all here tonight. I really felt a sense of just like family meeting this evening, especially even in our prayer times, and then as we come in here, and especially with what we're going to be sharing on tonight, and kind of the form that we're taking, we just wanted to really strip it back and kind of get to the heart of where we're at right now. We're excited. We are interviewing Brian. Ooh.
I've been really nervous. It feels like there's an expectation of something that's going to happen. It's like, do you know something I don't? But that's okay. We're all right.
I suppose the intention behind this was like the end of last year, or mid last year, the end of last year, Brian took up a role within our church. We also did, we had a call for giving to be able to support that role. So really what we wanted to do was just to share a bit about what is happening now, but also what are we looking forward to in the future. Brian and I have the privilege of sitting on our leadership team with Paul, Chantel and the Sergis, and yeah, we're aware we speak about stuff, and sometimes you think that everyone knows what's going on, but actually no one does. So really just we want to make sure that we're taking the time to get together as a family and to chat about stuff and to join together in the vision of where God has taken us right now in this season. We've come off an amazing weekend with our young adults, and like that, especially the picture that Finley shared this morning of just that fire and the small fires everywhere, but it igniting into a larger fire. Really what we want now is that big fire to come back, but it not to just be our young adults who are on fire. We want that to pass to each of us, and for us to really see God's vision of where he's taken us, but also partner with us in what's my specific role in that, in Carrick Vineyard, in Carrickfergus, in our schools, communities, workplaces. So that's what we want to share a bit about tonight. So, Brian, talk us through, how did you come to the role you're in today, from the conception, the birth of even an idea of there being a role, to now?
Yeah, I maybe spoke a wee bit of this like a few months back. Like, I'm not even 6 months in. It feels like I've been in longer than that. And yeah, thinking back with these questions, this started with Emma sending me a really long text message.
I apologised at the start.
And that's when you read that, I'm really sorry for this, but, and it goes on for a few pages of text message. It's more of an email, Emma, for that one. That's just for future. But
what generation are you?
It's okay. It's okay. It's but yeah, going back, like, we were thinking about this role of what it looked like to have a person in position, and I was like part of those conversations. I was thinking of somebody else. It's like, and I'm not here. And then God really unsettled me in my last job. He started to change some things in me, and then it came to the point where it was like, am I interested? I asked myself the question, and I took some really godly counsel and asked a really good friend who's a really good leader, and I said to her, look, this is on my mind, and she went, of course it is. Lean into your call. If you're called, do that. And I was out because I wasn't called. It's like, no problem. That's really clear, really helpful. No call, and that was me going, right, okay, it's grand. I'm now getting back into where I want that unsettledness. I've got it all worked through. And I was in that job over 20 years for the YMCA. And then it was Nua last year when Chantel and Jenna and I went for some prayer stuff, and God was doing stuff before it, and these people just spoke right out lots of clear things about this is for you. This is for you. And there's no ambiguity for it. I'm seeing this on you. I'm seeing this. I'm seeing this. Spoke really good words for our church, which are really healthy. We don't know these people, but we trust that process of prayer as people were hearing from God for us. And it was good stuff. It was like, okay, God, are you? And then the process of application and doing all those things, which was done really well. It was really difficult. So I think that's done well. If people make it really difficult, and it's really honouring to say, right, okay, I think you're in this, God, and I'm here. And that was October last year when I started the job. And actually, when I arrived here, it was probably the worst way to start a new job, to tell you the truth. Not because of anything the church had done, but just because of where I was. A really difficult place with my dad, who was unwell. And I remember the mountaintop of Legacy and Causeway Coast in Lagan Valley. I remember our 15th birthday, all those sort of stuff. And in the next couple of weeks, it was just rock bottom as my dad passed away. So it was a really difficult transition on the worst. Like, I remember my last weeks of work were spent taking time off work to go and care for my dad. Though it was really difficult. And the people here were so kind and so generous, so gracious. So thank you to you know who you are, people who were so kind. And Paul and Chantel as well, as they take on a new member of staff. And suddenly I wasn't here. But now that's part of that stuff's gone. And it feels like that's been ages ago, as I really start to get in and find out all the things that go on behind the scenes. You have no idea. Like, I've been involved in the church a long time, and you have no idea how much work goes on behind the scenes to make stuff like this happen. So it's an incredible privilege to be behind the scenes and to see it and to be part of it. So that's how I find myself here, not even 6 months in.
Yeah, brilliant. And Brian's actually our only full-time member of staff. So, yeah, that's incredible. Would you talk us through the structure of what does that look like in terms of your team? And who's involved? Where does board sit?
Yep. Leadership
team. How does that all work together cohesively?
Yeah. So now I'm paid to be here full time. Everybody doesn't do anything apart from me. This has been recorded, isn't it? It's not how it works. It really isn't how it works. Thanks, Alan. You like that? He's into email about you. So, yeah. The idea of the picture. Let me give you a picture. So I love pictures. The idea of we're thinking of head, heart, and hands was kind of what came about. Where like Paul and Chantel are the senior pastors. They're responsible for this. They planted this church 15 plus years ago, and I've had the privilege of following them and being led really well by them for 15 years. And how we think of this is where Paul would sit in the idea of head, and this is not headship as in he's the man, he's the head. It's not what we're talking about. It's the idea of vision, of sight, of responsibility, of seeing those sort of things, communicating that vision. Chantel, we know her heart is so soft. Her heart is for compassion, and that's where she leans into. That's what we take responsibility for. And my role then is to be the hands. So how does that work out? How do we be practical? What things need done? Like last week I fixed toilets. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not my job description. That's okay. Because that's not what I'm in the job description. So the things that need done. Tom sits as well. So all the sort of comms, office stuff. My first job was trying to get my head around all of Tom's jobs. And so that sits within the office as well. And it was great the other week we came in and we were just laughing our heads off at all the nonsense that was going on. It's really good fun. Owen's in there too. So Owen's volunteering. And so I get to line manage Tom and Owen, and the official speak of what that is, but really get to be alongside them, fall into step, make sure we're going in the right directions together in the right time. That's kind of how that dynamic works. And I really want to put myself in the places where I see all the little bits happening and what's going on, because as I said, there's so much going on that I didn't even realize that I have to get up to speed on. So that's kind of where I sit and what that looks like.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning there are other ministries, and Paul and Chantel are involved in leading out those other ministry leads as well. What does your role look like then? Like what would happen in a week, or you're saying toilets? Surely right. Give us something nice to pair that with.
Yeah, the weeks are. I'm also studying, so I have the privilege as well of studying a full day a week at Vineyard College. And the phrase that's been with me, it's kind of like drinking from a fire hose. That this is great stuff that's being fired at me, and I'm trying to get all this stuff in as well. So that takes a full day of that. But the way it works is we got some time in the office where all the admin stuff that needs to be on, we can get behind the scenes and that, looking after some of the finances, bits and pieces. But it's all about reviewing and looking at how do we do, what's going on, what's the next step, where are we going, life groups, how do we manage those, and seeing how we do the right things in the right way. Being in schools doing Alpha has been a real privilege as well. Like, us being in schools is excellent. Like, we get to be in there as a guest to go and tell people about Jesus. It's like, oh, you're inviting us to come? That's really good. So things like that. And Owen has been heading that up with other churches in the area. And we get to have conversations of what that looks like. People call in. A few conversations of like, yeah, this is happening. How do we chat about that? How do I look after life group leaders? How do I look after different ministry leads? Like Jeff, who was speaking today, Jeff and Lynn, checking in that everything's working there. All the sort of mechanics of how that rolls is kind of part of my job and what that looks like. And any other duties will fall into that. And I love that part. So don't hear me as me complaining about that. That's part of my role that I really like, being able to lead into those areas. That and other things, maybe.
Yeah. No, and I think it's pretty fair to say you're a very talented, blessed person. So you can kind of jack of all trades and pick up anything that God calls you to, which is incredible for us that we get that privilege of being blessed by you. I'm wondering, so you've just stepped into this role. It was a bit turbulent at the start. It was hard even just to settle. You know, we all know you start a new job. It takes you 6 months to even understand what the job is. Then you start your, okay, we're ready to flourish period. But for you, what does that look like? What's next? What do you see in the life of our church? Where's God working? What are we pressing into? What do you see around us at the minute?
And they're really good. And we spent some time with Andy Hickford when he was over with us, asking some really good questions of each other, asking, what's our vision to see this? What does it look like? How do we make this happen? And that was with our senior leadership and also other leaders around, and asking them to fit into that. And I think the thing is, the flourish word you used there is what we're after. But it's in all the areas. We want it all. Like what we're seeing with you guys, like blows me away. We're a generation, like having the privilege of being on the prayer team of Cause was great, just seeing people pursue them. And I love it. And I'm not going to settle if it's only for you. There's lots of other things. The men's weekend away, it's just like, yes, this is it. Where men are standing up, standing shoulder to shoulder with, excuse the rugby pun, but standing shoulder to shoulder with each other and just going for it, looking to pursue a relationship with Jesus. Having the youth things, Youth Weekend, Youth Alpha, all those sort of things, loving what's happening there. I think some of the areas that are coming up, this is where we want to push the needle on, are families. So if I'm honest, if I look at the church, where I see is, like, really consciously, Daniel my oldest boy kind of falls in the gap. He's 13. I've got some younger boys who are 10 and 8 and going, not greedily. What happens for us is, but God's given me the eyes to see of going, what do we do for families? What's going on here for families? So the next thing it's going to be is when we start to gather people with young families, like we're going to have conversations. It's going to be, what do we do for our boys? And other young parents of young families going, what does church look like for us? Because this isn't just a church for young adults. This isn't just a church for people who are my age. It actually needs to be a church which fits into all those areas. So those families is something which is really important to me. In that, we were talking with Andy Hickford, the sort of special educational needs, whatever that bracket falls into there. How do we be a church which is inclusive? We have so many gifted people in this church around that area, my wife being one, who can bring expertise towards that, where this can be a really welcoming place with people with additional needs. But then the idea then I'm thinking of is back to John Eldridge in a different book, not the one we've been banging on about so much, which is really good. He talked about an idea of Cowboy King, Knight and Sage was some of the areas. He had Lover in there, but we'll leave that one out because it doesn't fit my talk. And he says what this needs to be is, especially for men, but this works through different ideas of the church, where there's places can be the cowboy, can be the ranger, going and taking risks, doing all that sort of stuff. That's great. We want to play there. But then areas of a king, or what does kingship look like? When you find a realm to look after, when you find something that... No, sorry, let me go to Knight first. Something to fight for. So you're on where you're shouting out for a generation. You find something to fight for. Seeing the young people there at Cause going, we want to fight for this. They're wanting to be knights in this. What are you fighting for in this church? What are we contending for? Roy never stops praying for people in schools, right? That's what he's contending for. What goes on here for that? And then you get responsibility over that. I've been given responsibility over my family first. And then I've been given responsibility here in church. People have responsibility in worship and kids. Where do you have influence and responsibility? And then where do you get to become a sage and you pass this down? So people who are wise, people who have been there and done it before me, where does that saging fit into the other areas? That's what I would love for this family community to fit into young families, young adults, people who are parents, people who are not, people who have done that a long time ago and their kids are somewhere else. How do we all fit together in this community? Because I don't want it just to be what are we doing for kids and young adults. It's what are we doing as a family, and that's healthy. That fits into the whole legacy piece of how I am standing on the shoulder of giants, but what giant that can I be for others to stand on my shoulders? Sorry, I went off on that one a bit, but I think that's where I want to play and where I want to be.
Yeah, no, I think it's class. In that you're talking there, families, men and youth alpha and young people in schools.
Yeah.
And I think like the amazing thing is if you see God's fruit in one area, it almost multiplies into each of them.
Absolutely.
Can you give us a bit of insight on that?
Yeah, like it's when you start to see, so let's take youth for an example. When you start to see people flourish and thrive there, then you start to see their hearts soften for the younger members in other families and going, how do we mentor them? So how do we go back and create spaces where we go and have coffee and have conversations? And this fits into, like some of the research says around resilience here, that if you have someone other than in your family members that you can go and have a conversation with, a respected person, used to be the auntie and uncle type relationship, what that does for your mental health, it increases your resilience. You're less vulnerable to the other things that go on in society. So a generation which goes and has a cup of coffee doesn't sound like a whole lot when they meet and have conversations, but that actually then fits into the families, because what we're then growing up is boys and girls who are growing up here are being supported in their families by young adults who have just been a step or two in front of them. When you see older men and women, even people older than me, I know they exist somewhere, and that we maybe don't even do email, maybe before that.
Pigeon.
But but when that starts to get saged down to another thing, okay, Roy, I didn't point any fingers, but you did speak. But when that gets saged down to families, to young adults, what happens? It kind of builds in and flourishes. And then when you start to see men take their place as well, we've been quiet for a wee while, and they start to work out and say, this is what we're doing together. That creates stronger families. That then in turn creates stronger young people and stronger kids. And you see how the threads go through that. And it's not a self-help group, but this is where we become fully alive in who we are and we created to be. So please don't hear this as this is just a wee bunch of people looking to help each other. That's community, but this is for him. And this is who we've been made to be. And if we can have individuals take their place and come alive in that, we all benefit. I benefit whenever I stand at the back of the room looking to pray for people who are going for it, because I get inspired. And they benefit when I come to pray, maybe because I've seen something that the Lord has given me, or someone can give some wisdom because they've been there 10 and 20 years before. It all helps each other. It's the body of Christ playing together for the full reflection of what we are, which reflects him, I think.
And how do we get involved? What is next? How do each of us individually step into this and partner together in what God's doing?
This is probably an area I have been thinking about for a while, and I can't do this. So I'm a paid member of staff, and this is probably me being quite vulnerable here. So if it stays in this room, that's okay. If it doesn't, if it goes further, that's okay too. I have a responsibility to my employers, to the board and all how that works. But I can't do all this on my own. And I tend to be the person who runs in to go, I'll do this, I'll do that. And what I realized was my last job, how I described myself, was a facilitator. And it comes from the Latin word facilis, which means to make easy. And my job here should be making things to be made easy for you, because we need to do this together. If I'm the one pounding a rock and knocking my pan in, and Paul and Chantel and Tom and Owen, all of us are sort of in the same direction doing lots of good things. It's not going to get that much momentum. But whenever you buy in, whenever you ask the Lord to give you eyes to see where you play, and he shows you, and then you play there, that's when that happens. And that's the exciting thing for me. And also when we do that together, something changes. It's not just my eyes, it's all of our eyes together, hopefully his eyes, to say this is where we're playing. There are areas, so one of the things I'm going to be doing is chatting with young families with young children. How do we put that together? Paul prayed in our prayer meeting for people who are retired. Where do you play? People who have time, treasure, talent, maybe the time has increased a little bit. Where do you put your time in? Where do you find opportunities to siege others along the way? Young adults who are involved, want to be involved in mentoring. How do you find those conversations alongside other people? This is the sort of thing we're looking for. Also, I haven't got all the answers. What do you think? Where do you play? What has he put in your heart? And that's Christianese for like, what do you feel? Do you see injustice? Do you see care? Do you see compassion? Do you see a need? That's probably because he's made you to fill some of that in some way. And he's give you eyes to see, because probably it's about you getting involved there. That's what I would say. How do we get involved? We take those opportunities. Where's God leading? Where do we play? We have conversation with others, and I'll help. I'll help make it easy. I will do that, but I can't do it all for you. I can't do it all for us, and I think it would be unhealthy, unwise. It wouldn't be Jesus' way. He didn't come and just do it all. He got a bunch of people around him and went, do you want to go? He's sending them out to do the things, and I think that's probably the model we need to play with.
Thanks for listening to the Carrickfergus Vineyard podcast. If you'd like to find out more about our church, please visit our website, carrickfergusvineyard.org.